ওয়েলকাম ব্যাক সুধী দর্শক মণ্ডলী, আমাদের প্রোগ্রামে ফেরত আসার জন্য থ্যাংক ইউ। অ্যান্ড যারা আপনারা দেখছেন এখন আমাদের সাথে যোগ দিয়েছেন, আপনারা যারা জানেন না আজকে আমাদের প্রোগ্রামের বস্তু বিষয় কী, সেটা হচ্ছে আজকে আমাদের সাথে আছেন হ্যাকনি কাউন্সিলের ইন্ডিপেন্ডেন্ট মেয়র ক্যান্ডিডেট মোস্তফা কোরেল। ওনার সাথে আমরা কথা বলছি এবং বর্তমান সেগমেন্টে আমরা কথা বলবো হ্যাকনির সম্বন্ধে। হ্যাকনি কাউন্সিল, ইজ ইট ফেইলিং অর ইজ ইট সাকসিডিং আস, সেই সম্বন্ধে। হ্যাকনিবাসী যারা আছেন তারা যদি এই অনুষ্ঠান দেখে থাকেন, প্লিজ ডু কল আস। নিচে নাম্বার আছে যে আপনারা এই প্রোগ্রামের মাধ্যমে মোস্তফার কাছে আপনারা কোয়েশ্চেন রাখতে পারবেন বা আপনার মতামত রাখতে পারবেন। আমি আপনাদেরকে আবারও মনে করিয়ে দিচ্ছি আমাদের আজকের কুইজ, দ্য কুইজ অফ টুডে ইজ when was Hackney Council created, 1965, 1967 or 1969? আপনার স্ক্রিনে এটা আসবে এবং কোথায় আপনারা ইমেল করতে হবে। ইমেলের অ্যাড্রেস হচ্ছে pnb@channeleurope.tv। এখানে আপনারা আপনাদের উত্তরটা পাঠিয়ে দিবেন। Okay, Mustafa, we're back onto the second segment where we're going to talk about Hackney. And you being the male candidate, we would like to know, I mean, from your point of view, is Hackney failing or succeeding?
That's a difficult question because in certain areas it excels.
You have to remember you're also a resident, not only a candidate, so
Yeah,
you've got both areas.
Absolutely, but in certain areas it fails.
Okay.
So for instance, let's look at child poverty, for instance. So when I was growing up, we saw it around us, and Hackney now still ranks as one of the worst places in England for child poverty. And then you look at child obesity rates. It's been steadily climbing in Hackney, and again it's at an unacceptable rate. And there needs to be a response for that. So in terms of, for instance, the Olympic legacy, you look and you think, well, where is the sporting legacy actually that can engage these young people to stop us having these sedentary lifestyles, to get us more active? We're just not seeing that filter through into Hackney. And in terms of its regeneration policy, so regeneration is a big issue right now for residents like myself as well. In 5 years, you won't recognise Hackney. It will be, I call it, identical to other areas which have become soulless and don't have the diversity that they had, or the hustle and the bustle. Let's look at Dalston, for instance. There are going to be tower blocks being put up. Like in the 50s, we put tower blocks up. Why? To address a housing shortage. Today, we're putting tower blocks up because it's the most affordable type of housing for people in Hackney. But the thing is that actually it's not for the people of Hackney because it's not affordable.
Let me just stop you there for a minute.
Please.
If the council's not doing, if you're opposing to tower blocks, how else would they house all these people? I mean, earlier in our break, we were discussing about the waiting list, and you're saying it's so close to 16,000, 15,000.
Yeah.
So if there's 15,000 people that needs to be rehoused, surely the council has a duty to make houses.
It does.
And if there's not enough land, then the only way is to go up.
So a couple of things. I'm not totally against building up,
Right.
but it's got to be appropriate.
Right.
But it's also got to meet the council's target of 50% affordable housing. A recent application, the developer submitted the application with only 11% affordable housing.
Right.
That's unacceptable.
Sure.
We've got these guidelines. Why aren't we keeping to them? We want people to be housed, but we can't house them because we're not meeting our affordable housing targets. That logic doesn't follow with me. Secondly, a REBA study has also shown that you don't have to build up to have the same density. So you can build 3-4-story houses in the footprint of a tower block, which will have the same square footage as what's in a tower block.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, Kira, tower blocks. Do you think that council, the way they're doing it, I mean, the modern way of doing it, it's not the 50s way. The 50s ones were more concrete and things like that. But the modern ones they look nice, they're affordable, and they fight the fires and everything, reduce consumption and everything. On top of that, it's also taking on people from the waiting list. So, do you agree with Mustafa that there should be less of that?
Well, again,
although he doesn't disagree with it,
Yeah.
but he wants less of it, but more of the houses.
Well, it comes down again to affordable housing. You know, it's fine to build as high as you want, but house the people who are on the list, who are in Hackney, and who, like me, for example, can't afford to live in Hackney.
So you have to
at the
move
moment.
out,
Yeah. And 11% isn't enough. I mean, there is a massive influx of people coming into Hackney, and of course there is. It's you know, it's a lovely place.
It's Innerborough, yeah.
And you know, the shortification of it, I guess, is making it a very trendy place to live. Of course, people do want to live there, but there are so many people who are there already who are not being serviced by this. It's the emphasis is on making money out of people, bringing people in, rather than serving the people who are there. And I think that tower blocks, you know, it's not about building the tower blocks, it's about housing the people.
Sure, sure. You said about trendy. Talking about trendy, Jill Pipes is pumping in some money to a trendy cafe bar.
The Hackney Heart.
Hackney Heart?
Yes.
So he's doing something right. He's getting a local businesswoman and you know, helping her in her aspirations.
Yes.
Isn't that what we're about?
We are about supporting small and medium enterprises.
Yes.
Of course we are. But Hackney Heart is branded as a not-for-profit organisation, so
Right,
it's
okay.
not...
It's a charity organisation.
Yeah, not making a profit. And I know that there's been a lot of issues with people finding out and then opposing it and rightfully getting angry, because there was a black activist bookshop called Centerprise, which a couple of years ago was evicted by the council because their peppercorn rent was increased to £37,000. And then...
So you're saying there's a bit inequality in there?
There's a definite inequality, but it's not... it's not the individual herself who's running Hackney Heart, which it kind of angers me that people are starting to make it very personal about the person running it. It's not about the person running it, it's actually about the policy, and the policy is being misapplied across the board. So what Hackney wants to do to Narroway is they want to turn it into some sort of upper street. It's very clear by all the public communications that they've been sending to the press. And Narroway could be a total asset to the community as well if rents didn't rise so much, because it's becoming, again, a very trendy place. And I think one of the things we've got wrong as well is we need to show small and medium enterprises that actually we are in a tough time, and this is how we're going to support you. How we're going to support you is we're going to expand the rebates for small and medium enterprises, the rates rebates for small and medium enterprises. And one of the things that Hackney doesn't have is a Hackney Business Association, a pan-Hackney Business Association. So traders don't have that unified voice to influence, and so that's one of the things that I'd help facilitate.
I find that quite strange that they don't have such a body, because you know, places like Tower Hamlets, Newham and Westminster, they have, the traders have their own bodies, and they created themselves, and then they went to the council and said, we are here and listen to our voice. And so I was very surprised that they're not organised.
They are organised in small pockets.
Right,
so
okay.
I guess, so in Stoke Newington you've got the Stoke Newington Business Association. In Chatsworth Road you've got the Chatsworth Road Traders and Residents Association. And on Ridley Road you have the Ridley Road Market Traders Association. So all of those they operate within something that I call silos. So it looks like they operate within themselves, and that's not good. I think for me it's to bring them all together and say, while you can still keep the Stoke Newington Business Association or the Chatsworth Road or Ridley Road, it would be very useful to have a pan-Hackney business alliance or business association. Because then the council can get a view of what the traders want, what small, medium
I'm surprised you said
want.
that, because in the Labour quartet, these are the things that they want to do, keeping, you know, kind of a union kind of thing, and bring all the traders in one place. And could it be just because they're traders, they're so-called the businessmen, that's why Joel Pipe is not much interested in it?
I'm not sure.
But I'm also surprised that you have someone like Diane Abbott, who's very vocal and very high profile, is not picking this up.
I'm not sure why they don't, but I think one of the things that we are doing is we're failing pre-existing businesses in this borough, in Hackney. So we're not offering them the support that we are. Instead, what we're doing, actually what the whole regeneration is about, is very destructive. So we're cleaning the slate and we're building something new, something vibrant. And that's not right. You've had people who've had their shops for generations, and you can't kick them out because we're going through a rough patch in economics.
Kira, I'm not ignoring you, but because he's going to be the mayor.
Absolutely, yeah.
Then people need to know more about his views. That's why I'm giving him more coverage than you.
Oh, that's fine.
In terms of you know, the governance we talked about earlier, Michael Gove's and the governance and things like that. Let's come to the Hackney governance. There was a bit of a article about not responding to freedom of informations.
Yeah.
And they meant to, in any council, that this is a statutory regulation that they have to respond by 20 days.
Yes.
And they're not responding.
Yes.
So what is the reason from your point of view?
From my point of view, I'm not sure, because I actually received a freedom of information request last Wednesday.
Was it within the time frame?
I sent that in April last year.
So well over 6-7 months.
Yeah. And the reason that I was given it was sent to the wrong person, because the person we sent it to was on maternity leave. Make what you will of that.
Yeah. Well, the council doesn't operate with one person.
Of course.
They have a generic system.
Yeah, we have a duty.
Yeah.
And also it's about planning as well. So how can you not plan?
So did you get the reply from the same person who you addressed it to?
No. So you address it to the FOI at Freedom Information Service.
Now I'm just wondering if this person gave birth and then came back to respond to your query.
I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But it's about contingency planning, which I think they don't have. Right, and I don't want to attack Freedom of Information Services, actually.
Yeah.
I think they're an overstretched department, like every department in Hackney.
Sure.
It's just, you have to innovate a little bit more, just to say we've got less resources, how can we do more with less resources? And that's the key, and, you know, there's this bureaucratic process which bogs everyone down, but you've got to look at it in a way, oh, okay, how can we liven things up?
Yeah.
And freedom of information, that's sacrosanct in my view.
Sure.
You can't not respond to people because people have a right to know.
Of course, yeah.
And so I guess one of the things one of the things that we should be looking at is how can we support freedom of information response unit services? How can we make sure that we deliver before the 20-day limit, and how can we be as open and as transparent as we can? Perhaps it could be something as simple as making all that information available on the website and on the servers. Something as simple as that could definitely open up and challenge in a different way.
Sure. Surely he must be doing something right, because earlier we talked about, I mean, Joel Pipes I'm talking about, because earlier we were talking about that if he's taken away the officers from the councillors and not having much time with the officers, surely that can be expedited to the residents, i.e. to freedom of information queries and things like that. And you having a respond after like 8 months, it's not helping, is it? Do you lived in Hackney and you moved out, but you're coming and going in Hackney. Have you seen any changes besides these are like behind the scene kind of governance and all that, but on the streets, is this at least the streets would be clean, or you know, the office buildings and the entrances and things like that, they will be more welcoming and things in those kind of tangible manners. Do you think that there has been improvement? I'm just trying to find out that where is all this budget and everything going towards?
Well, there are street cleaners. There always have been. I would like to know where it's all going as well.
But do you feel that it's more safer and more cleaner, your borough, Hackney Borough is more safer and cleaner than when you moved out?
Safe?
Under dual pipes? Because I just want to find out that where the money is being invested. You know, so if you as a resident feel some goodness about it, then there must be some good somewhere.
But how much worth can you put into clean streets when, you know, there are still so many other problems going on? It doesn't really balance out. You know, it's almost like putting a sticking plaster on or just making something look pretty and then hiding the fact that all this other stuff is going on. And I would rather put up with litter and have a better administration, and a better run administration, a more transparent one, than, you know, it just, you have to find a balance in there.
Sure,
and has all that money really just gone to pay street cleaners?
Yeah.
It's, you know, it doesn't really work.
Sure. In terms of the unemployment in the borough, that's quite high too at the moment.
Yes, it's above the national average. And youth unemployment always remains above the national average in Hackney.
Okay. What's the ratio at the moment?
The ratio...
the total unemployment ratio?
The total of 16 to 24-year-olds, the last figure that I had was 2,000, and that was in April 2013. But that has been dropping since. And I think it still remains... If it still remains above national average, then there's something wrong. I should also say, for me, I feel when we talk about statistics and we talk about ratios, we kind of lose sight that actually these are real people.
Yeah.
So for me, I try not to go too much into depth about statistics. What I want to do is I want to give stories about people who are experiencing the worst of the worst, which shouldn't be the case.
Sure.
So for instance, in Hackney on my estate, you have 3 young men who hang around all day. One of them got a job recently, and I asked him, when did you get a job? And he's like, oh, I got it in a chicken shop, but it's a job at the end of the day. It means I've got to do something and get some money. And that's what he said to me, and his 2 friends are unemployed. I said, oh, why don't you go to the youth club? And they're like, oh, the youth club's been closed, there are these hubs now, so we've got youth club hubs in the borough. And they're like, I'm not going to something
rebranding.
So yeah, so there's 5 mega youth centres, let's call them, and they were like, well, we're not going to that because it doesn't really cater to us.
Sure. So there's nothing locally for people, so they have to go over to these hubs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And so I've got a youth worker background as well, and so what has been proven and what's been found is that in order to engage young people, you can't speak at them, you have to speak with them. They have to speak with you, and actually they have to lead their own youth services. And the way you do that is you localise services. You don't create a mega youth centre.
Sure.
Because how can a mega youth centre respond to an issue?
So isn't there a youth service? Is it just centralised, or is it not distributed among others that you deliver this bit, you deliver that bit?
No, it comes under the children and young people services.
Okay, it's all under centralised then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's not really helpful, because if your address is in, let's say, in one area, and then you'll have to walk like 30 minutes to go to the hub.
Yeah.
I don't see any youth doing that.
No.
You know, youth being lazy as it is, but not in a bad way.
Yeah.
You know, not in a bad way, but you know, the parents do have to get their sticks out and things out to get them people done. And if it's not reasonably within your doorstep, then you can't really do anything. You know what I mean? And I'm very surprised that they're just doing this, just the 5 hubs. The green space, I've touched a little bit on your website, and you are very keen on saving green space that are under threat.
Yes, that's the Hackney Marshes, and that's Mabley Green. So that policy was done in consultation with the community in that area in Hackney Wick. And one of the things that was very clear is that space is very much under threat.
Threat from?
The council,
okay.
surprisingly.
Yeah.
So the council wants to build a car park on green land. Hello.
So which one is more important, housing, green space, or car park?
Yeah. For me, is that a question directed to me?
Sure.
If you direct it to me, we've got this amazing resource, which is the spiritual home of grassroots football as well. We can't be building on it. We can't be taking land away from people, because it's actually been linked as well. That it improves mental health. Green space improves people's outlook.
No, of course you need green space, but at the same time, if the council needs to house 16,000 residents, 15,000 residents, I'm surprised they're trying to house cars in a car park.
Well, that's surprising, but on the marshes I wouldn't build houses either. I think that's something very special. It's an asset to the community, and we can't go building on assets like that. Hackney is the greenest borough in London as well, and when you start building on green land, you set a precedent for other developers saying, oh, it's fine, and then you end up having no green land, you know, and that's not what we're in it for.
The Georgian building that's been built in 1807, that's not very far from where you live, is it?
No, it's
and
yeah.
I hear that that's going to be demolished. I don't know. Would you be able to tell us that why it was targeted to demolish?
Well, because
at the moment, I think they stopped the demolition, but
yeah, because it was an unsafe structure.
Right. Okay.
That's the reason. And the question, well, it's done now. The question is, well, why did the council let it get into that situation? And they do this so often. Again, it's not looking after what you've got. You have to look after what you have, because they are your assets. Like I said, it's done. It is going to be demolished whether we like it or not, is my view. And it's a shame, you know, there's another bit of heritage that's going away. And like I say, it was unsafe, so obviously you can't keep it there. It's an unsafe structure. But what campaigners are doing at the moment is drawing attention to this kind of neglect and dereliction of duty towards these buildings. So they've got a film screening at the local cinema at Rio in Hackney this Saturday, in fact. Oh, I'm just plugging them. Yeah, so this Saturday at 1:30 there's a film called Under the Cranes, and it just shows you the changing face of Dawston as well. Should be an interesting afternoon, just seeing how Dawston has been changing over the past several years.
I mean, we have to go on a break in a bit, but before we go, I'm just going to sum up what we said. Any other thoughts that you want to add on the Hackney side of it, besides the marsh lands? Do you want to see it retained, or do you want to see?
Absolutely.
Do you want to see?
It's the heart. You know, if you take out the heart, then what do you have left?
Well, being a devil's advocate, you're only going to go there for like once in a month.
Yeah, but then everyone goes there once in a month. It's